Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Steve Call. I'm the Dean of the Columbia Journalism School. I'm really glad to see so many people here this morning, and I hope this day will be very useful to you. I'm sure it'll be very engaging. I'd like to thank my faculty colleagues, Sam and David and Janina, who are going to come up and talk to you. I'm just here to welcome you and give you a kind of a brief introduction of how we think of ourselves as a graduate school and a few of the things we've been working on in our curriculum over the last few years, and take any questions you might have for me. The first thing I would emphasize is the school's been around for 100 years, and it was founded by Joseph Pulitzer of the eponymous prizes, and he had a vision of professional journalism in a democracy that proved to be very prescient for his time when he wrote about it and when he created this school. He had an idea that professional reporting, independent and digging and operating without fear or favor, could strengthen a citizenry in an open society. And so I'd like to start there because journalism is always being disrupted. It's being disrupted by technologies, new technologies, and we've been thinking about how to teach and practice professional journalism since before radio in this school. So we've adopted and adapted lots of new technologies, lots of new ways of telling stories, but we've never wavered from this commitment to reporting and to public interest journalism and to storytelling, even as we challenge ourselves to innovate and to adapt new technologies with real creativity. So that's really the heart of our kind of sense of the school and on the faculty. And I would say there's another thing about this school that I've come to really appreciate. You know, we're just a graduate school, so everyone who comes here is committing themselves to a serious course of study about journalism and to become a professional journalist. From the very first day, we talk to our students and say, you're now journalists, so let's talk about what that means as a profession, as your own kind of vocation and habits. And a lot of our curriculum is rooted in what we think of as the core of journalism, which is reporting, fact gathering, learning how to use diverse techniques to uncover important stories, and then also storytelling. Our faculty represents, the full gamut of journalism techniques, from the kind of frontiers of digital video journalism for mobile devices to deep long-form documentary filmmaking to narrative nonfiction book writing, arts criticism, data journalism, computational journalism. There's a really diverse set of skills on the faculty, but we all have in common a devotion to independent, deep reporting as the core of where good journalism comes from. I would say over the last few years, some themes that have been particularly alive at the school, and as we keep evolving our curriculum to meet the needs of professional journalism today. One is investigative reporting, which we have really added as a required part of the curriculum over the last couple of years, so that every student, no matter what their interests are, even if they are driven by a passion for sports reporting or culture reporting, that they know how to use public records, they know how to file FOIA requests, they know how to go to the courthouse and come away with something useful, and so on. Another theme has been, of course, the rise of data journalism, which is the best term we have to describe a really complicated set of changes in the field, where what we see is in the whole structure of information in our world, as you know, is changing very rapidly. You have enormous sets of data that provide the backdrop for really important decisions that journalists have to be interested in. Where do you send police forces in a city? Increasingly, that decision is made by an algorithm. How do you allocate social service budgets from a government? Again, computational decisions with maybe unintended discriminatory results are increasingly shaping the way power is exercised. And that's just government, never mind all the powerful corporations we interact with online and in our social media spheres. So to perform the function that journalists normally perform, which is to go around and ask impertinent questions and try to uncover what's the pattern here and what are your assumptions and how are you having an effect in the real world, we have to be able to do a little more math than we started out doing, at least in my generation. A lot of us went into this business to avoid doing math, and that's still all right. But there is a field emerging, a very powerful field of computational journalism that encompasses some of these themes, and Janina is a leader in it on the global stage, and she'll talk to you about it more. It's certainly something to understand about the school, even if you don't concentrate in that area yourself. And the other theme I would mention is international journalism. This is really a global school. We think of ourselves as educating journalists on a global scale. About a third or so of our student body comes from outside the United States. We find that many of our American students are interested in international journalism. And so we've been trying to respond to all these changes over the last decade or so at the school. In the curriculum now, we tend to teach global examples, not just American ones. And we try to create opportunities for students to engage in international journalism, particularly during the second half of the curriculum when you're moving toward a kind of workshop environment. And the last thing I would say, just by way of introduction, I'm happy to take some questions, is this is my 5th year here at the school, and so now I really understand how central the teaching culture is at this graduate school. I mean, this is a very intensive seminar-based teaching culture. It is different from perhaps many of the educational experiences you've had as an undergraduate or in other settings. We have about 35 full-time faculty. Many of us are still very active in journalism, but the central calling of our role on the faculty is to teach in small groups and to mentor one-on-one and to work very closely from the very first reporting classes with each of you as individuals to try to lift you up into a position where you can come out of the school in May and walk into the very best newsrooms in the country with some confidence and some real capability as a young professional or as an early professional. So yes, when we talk about the school amongst ourselves as faculty, it's hard to have a conversation that lasts more than 10 minutes without teaching coming into it, and that will be your experience if you come here. So that's the overview I would offer, and if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take 2 or 3, but otherwise this is going to be a fast-moving series of panels and discussions, and it'll give you a pretty good flavor for some of the range of the school.
If anybody would like to ask questions, please go over to the mic so that everybody can hear the question.
It's a really striking thing about the journalism school, even after people are admitted and decide to come, that when you ask them to ask questions, they don't. So someone has to break the ice. Someone ask a question. There you go.
Hi, my name is Catherine Long. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the dual degree programs that are at Columbia Journalism School and how those are integrated into what you just spoke about, an emphasis on teaching and mentorship, and what advantages and disadvantages being a dual degree student might have in that regard.
Thank you. Good question. And some of that I would invite Christine and Brett to speak to because they have a kind of a fuller sense of the range. We have several dual degree programs here. The most active currently is one with the Computer Science Department of the School of Engineering. And that group moves back and forth between 2 very rigorous programs over the course of 2 years. Correct? 2 years, yeah. And you end up with an MS in computer science and an MS in journalism. And the opportunities, obviously, in today's world to shape the operations of media companies, to participate in newsrooms as both a journalist and a coder, they're almost unlimited. But that is a dual degree program that requires qualifications for both admissions cycles, and so it's a relatively small group. I think about 9 or 10 each year, so about 20 at a time. Another dual degree we have is with SIPA, School for International and Public Affairs. And I find, in my experience of the student body, there's always a few people who are in the middle of that. You essentially get a degree in international public policy alongside a degree in journalism. And then there are a few other opportunities that are smaller in scale. Am I forgetting one? Law, business, religion. They're companion degrees in the case of religion, and but in each case you would be applying simultaneously to the sister school. Anyone else? Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about how the school has evolved as media has evolved, like what you were saying about the past 100 years.
Yeah. So, as you know, probably as consumers as participants in social media, as consumers of journalism, the digital revolution has been now underway for almost 2 decades. So the World Wide Web broke out in the late 90s and disrupted newspapers pretty quickly and created opportunities for new digital-first publishers. And by the time you got to 2006, newspapers could see that their whole methodology had to change and that their business was under serious threat. And television networks started to develop their own digital arms as well. So around that time, the school began to re-examine its curriculum in order to try to reset the balance between more traditional approaches to reporting and writing instruction with the requirements of these new kind of platforms. And there are 2 concrete manifestations of how the school has grown in this way that are on the first floor. They're both through the same set of glass doors, the Tao Center for Digital Journalism and the Brown Institute for Media Innovation. So these are 2 now very well-resourced centers that support our curriculum and our engagement with lots of emerging technologies that have evolved into newsrooms and into journalistic practice since 2006. The Brown Institute is run by a colleague named Mark Hansen, who's a statistician and a coder and an artist, and he has a budget to seed new projects in storytelling with emerging technologies, whether these involve 360-degree video or augmented reality or drone photography. We try to encourage both instruction and creative storytelling through technologies that may not yet be mainstream in the New York Times or CNN, but which are coming and which may end up themselves being quite disruptively important in the next phase of technology's interaction with journalism. Today, the biggest conversation in the field about the next big disruption is AI, artificial intelligence, and so you'll find regular seminars engaged in workshops through those institutions. And others can tell you more about how the curriculum itself, the core curriculum, has been restructured to allow you to report and work in fields like digital video, and to make sure that everyone has a common understanding of how the distribution of journalism, for example, has changed as social media companies have become so powerful. We kind of have mixed feelings about some of these changes, but we want to make sure you understand them and can incorporate your knowledge about how distribution on Facebook, YouTube, Snap, and other platforms works and how it affects you as a young reporter. And we want to make sure you're literate about these changes when you come into a newsroom, if that's where you choose to go after you finish our program. All right. Well, I hope this is helpful to you. Really good to see you here. My email is on the school website. If you have a particular question that you think I could address, feel free to write me. my inbox is a bit of a fire hose, but I can usually I can usually recognize if you put in the header was at the info session or something. So yeah, thanks, and I don't know who's next.
Thanks very much, Dean Call. Next, I'd like to, first I would like to just speak for a couple of minutes. My name is Christine Souders. I'm the Associate Dean for Admission and Financial Aid here at the Journalism School. Other admission staff who are here, my colleague Brett Sion, who is standing in the back and keeping us rigorously on time. David Hooker, who is sitting in the back corner there, who is also running the chat. We are running a live stream, which is one of the reasons why we want people to use the microphones so the people in the live stream can hear and participate as well. But I am also delighted to see all of you. Oh, and I should also say that my colleague in the back, Jim, who is running all of the live stream kinds of things, or has some people upstairs running the live stream, and he's down here keeping an eye on things. So welcome to all of you. I would like to just maybe get a little bit of an idea from you which programs you're interested in. So could you just give me a show of hands for people who are looking at the 10-month or the 2-year part-time Master of Science program? Okay, so quite a few of you. And how about any of the dual degree programs at all? Okay, that's great. Any people interested in the new data journalism program? Great, because we have Giannina Segnini here to talk about that specifically. And we also have a Master of Arts program, which is more of a mid-career program for people who already have 3 to 10, 15 years of experience in journalism and who want to specialize in a particular subject or topic area in journalism. Do I have any MA prospects here? Yes, I do. That's great. David Haydu, who helps lead the arts and culture concentration in the MA program, is here, but he can also talk to the other program areas as well. Do I have any doctoral people who are interested in doctoral programs today? Okay, so I think what we're going to do then is simply mention that we have a doctoral program in communications. It's an interdisciplinary program. Students take courses here at the journalism school as well as across the university for that program. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about the doctoral program. And next I'm going to invite the faculty to come on up and have a seat. They're each going to take about 5 or 6 minutes to talk about the programs that they work most closely with, give you a little information about the programs, talk a little bit about the expectations of the students who are in the program, and also a little bit about what we look for in a student for a particular program, kinds of skills, that kind of thing. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time taking questions, because I know people always have questions for the faculty. So first, Giannina Segnini, David Haydu, Sam Friedman. Giannina, why don't we start with you to have you talk a little bit about data. She's got a couple of slides here that she wants to use, so I'm going to step down and let Giannina take over.
Thank you very much, Christine. Welcome, everybody. My name is Giannina Segnini. I'm an investigative reporter who discovered data in the early days, the 90s, and became fascinated by the possibilities and the power that we can get by using data in our reporting. I'm so happy to share with you the curriculum for the new MS in Data Journalism. We're going to start this year. It's a 3-semester program. And the background is the school led a group of data journalists across the country who conducted a survey on the needs for training and education on data journalism. As a result of this, there was a report that not only found, what those needs were, but also some potential solutions, and so we embraced this report and became leaders in the field, and that's the background for the new degree. Now, how do we integrate data in journalism? Sometimes the words data journalism, algorithms, and all that sounds like rocket science, but believe me, it isn't. Data is nothing else but a representation of reality at a certain point in a certain moment, and geographically. So if you think about data not as an abstract concept, but as a record of reality, the reality around us, then it's really fascinating, all the things you can do. I'm going to talk about the curriculum, but first, let me tell you, we have several options if you're interested in data. So it's not only the new Master of Science in Data Journalism, but we also have a program called the LEAD program in the summer. So it's mostly about skills, data skills, and it does not have so much journalism on in the curriculum, but it's mostly for people who are experienced journalists or from any other background and who want to develop those skills. Now, the Master of Science in Data Journalism, how is it different from the dual degree? And you might wonder, well, why do you have 3 different programs? Well, they have different approaches. The Master of Science in Data Journalism fully integrates data, computational journalism, and the philosophy is, yes, acquiring those skills, but primarily is learning by doing. So it's a very intense program that starts in the summer. And you don't need to have any background on journalism or data or computation, just the desire to learn. Now, the purpose is of this program is, well, we'll start, as I said, in the summer with all these different modules. We start with foundations of computing, databases, and algorithms, and it's not only learning how to build, algorithms or create databases or interrogate them, but also how to interrogate, for instance, an algorithm. Most of the decisions nowadays are made by algorithms, and we need to understand how they operate and what are the assumptions and the premises of those algorithms. So that's partly what we do in this module. Then we have reporting, because, as I said, this is not a place to come and learn how to code. It's beyond that. We do that, certainly, but in the context of a story, which is our goal. Then in the second semester, we have reporting 2. Then we start learning how to write data stories. And across the fall and the spring, we have a data computation and innovation workshop. And here is like a playground where we experiment and different technologies. For instance, network analysis, how to connect the dots between entities and relationships. Then also, the students need to work on a thesis or a master's project that needs to have a data component. Of course, we have advisors that help the students one-on-one across along the year. And then in the spring, we also have different data-related classes. For instance, I teach a class that it's called Using Data to Investigate Across Borders. So it's not just the data, but it's how to use international data sets to find global stories that are relevant. Over the last 3 years, we have a project that we all work together in partnership with ICIJ, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And as you know, well, these guys are leaders in data journalism. And so, for instance, we worked on the Panama Papers project, a group of students, and recently with the Paradise Papers. So people from all over the world come to us and work together with us in discovering what's behind this data. So I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Janina. And I think we're going to hold the questions until each faculty member has had a chance to speak, and then we'll welcome all of the questions. David, maybe you would like to talk about the MA program for us. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about the MA program, the Masters of Arts program, which is the program that I wish existed when I was in your shoes. I came up in a magazine called Entertainment Weekly. That's how I learned my trade, learned by doing there the old-fashioned way. And I spent about 10 years there, but what I really wanted to do when I grew up was write long-form journalism, in-depth journalism for places like The Atlantic and Harper's and the New York Times Magazine, and write serious long-form criticism for places like the New York Review of Books and later N+1. And Entertainment Weekly did not prepare me to do that. It took me about 10 years to figure out what to do by stumbling, failing, grasping, groping, begging for help, and failing in some cases. The MA, what I needed was the MA program. The MA program is designed to provide in-depth instruction in specialized subject area for people interested in one of the four following subjects: arts and culture, which I co-teach, politics, business, and science. And each of one of the concentrations is taught by practitioners in the field, respected people in the field. Politics is taught by Nick Lemon, the former dean here, and then Xandros Stila. Business and finance taught by Jim Stewart, writes for the New York Times, and second player to be named. We're in transition there. Science by Jonathan Weiner, Pulitzer Prize winner, and Marguerite Holloway. And Arts and Science by Elisa Solomon, a longtime theater critic for The Village Voice and author of a book called Wonder of Wonders, and me. And the notion is that the program is something of a hybrid of a classic, deep, rigorous graduate school seminar and intellectual content and a skills-based journalism program. It's for people who already have some experience in the field, already know what a lead is, are not afraid to pick up the phone and make a phone and do an interview, know how to structure a story and make a sentence, but could use some help to do that better. Don't have to be a master at journalism skills, but you need to have a grasp of bedrock journalism skills to qualify for the program. And then you come to the MA program and learn how to write in specialized subject area with depth and authority. Now, how do we do that? We do that by having the core of the program is 2 3-hour seminars per week and then a group of additional classes. And for each one of the seminars, we require extensive reading, up to 80 to 100 pages of reading per class. And then we discuss that reading and discuss issues in each of the seminars. And then go off and use what we've read, what we've thought about, what we've discussed, and what we've learned in journalism practice. All the assignments are journalism. You don't do any academic papers or scholarly papers. You learn and read and talk with an interesting peer group and learn and then apply that to journalism. I could talk about the curriculum for the arts and culture program, which I've been teaching for about 10 years now. In the fall, we focus, generally speaking, on foundational material. We cover aesthetics. What does it mean to be an artist? What is the relationship between the artist and society? A lot of foundational material. What is the relationship between the private self and the public self? Our students, I think, are more equipped to deal with the current issue of what happens when bad people make good art than anyone else I know, because they have read Foucault and they've studied Nazi propaganda and studied the entire history of the relationship between the private self and the public self, and really understand it pretty well at this point after several weeks of deep immersion in these complicated issues. Then in the second term, we shift more to art and practice, and we look at the art marketplace in nuts and bolts way. How does that work? We look at public policy, arts policy, relationship between governance and the arts. We look at intellectual property law, copyright law. I should add at this point that we do much of this in collaboration with specialists in other schools at Columbia, and that's one of the great assets and one of the unique qualities of the MA program. About a third of the seminar classes are taught in collaboration with other professors from other schools. For instance, we'd have a class in the fall on anthropological conceptions of culture. When we talk about culture, we may think of coffee culture, subway culture. Anthropologists think about culture in a different way, and it's useful for us to know that and to shake up the way that we think of culture. So we co-teach a class with Professor Paige West, an esteemed professor in the anthropology department. We take up theory, and we do that in collaboration with Andreas Huyssen, one of the leading thinkers in literary theory in the world. We've taken up postmodernism, and we do that with a professor from the architecture school named Reinhold Martin. And that's our model, where, Elisa and I could probably do those classes pretty well, but we have here on campus, a few hundred yards away, some of the deepest thinkers in these subject areas. So we tap that resource and we co-teach these classes. What else did I want to say? Oh, in the MA program, another unique benefit of the MA program is that MA students also get to take students in the other graduate schools. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the MS students do that. The MA students can take a class in the English department or in the School of the Arts, or they could study drama in the School of the Arts. It's another really great asset of the program. That is how it works in essence, and I'll be here to answer any questions you have about that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, David. Sam Friedman is going to talk with us about the Master of Science program, which is actually the foundational program here at the journalism school. It's really the only program that we have here that can be done either full-time or part-time. It is also the program that is linked to the dual degree programs. So if for any of you who might be interested in a dual degree program here at the journalism school, the Master of Science is the co-program.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Welcome, everybody. Let me not bury the lead. There's no better time to be a journalist than right now. I've been doing this work since the mid-1970s as a professional, and this is the best moment ever to be a journalist. It's never been more important. It's never been more urgent. So you absolutely are making the right choice going into this field, or wherever you end up going to grad school. And I can speak from more than a quarter century of experience about both the part-time program and the full-time program. Curricularly, they are identical. There's no advantage or disadvantage to going full-time versus part-time. The main difference is the time investment, which has some household economic consequences. If you go full-time, you're going to start in August with a month of orientation and be done basically by mid-May, so approximately 10 months. If you go part-time, you're going to start around Memorial Day of 1 year and go basically just shy of 2 years. You'll finish mid-May, 2 years later. The idea of the part-time program was that there are a lot of people, particularly somewhat older cohort, career switchers, people with families, people who, for various reasons, couldn't stop earning money entirely to come here, or had family obligations that couldn't be set aside, 5 to 6 to 6.5 days a week, the way the workload is for our full-time students. So this allowed them to avail themselves of everything Columbia Journalism School has to offer. And it's been a terrifically successful program. I taught the very first class that was offered in it, and one of my students that summer, Amy Ellis Nutt, is now a Pulitzer winner for the Washington Post and a best-selling author. So the part-time program, just like the full-time program, has had tremendous success. What both programs aim to do are two things. Number one, yes, to prepare you for the job you're going to get when you leave here, but also to prepare you to be a leader in this industry in 10 years or 20 years. So I think this is something that really differentiates Columbia's main program from virtually every other journalism school in the country, which is that we're not just worried about you being able to be a starting reporter or an assistant producer or a skillful aggregator or to do effective web design. We do want you to have those skills and to get hired, but we also want you to think and to develop the skills and the ethical compass and everything else to allow, and the management sensibility to allow you to be leading a news organization in 10 or 20 years, to allow you to be writing long-form stories for the New Yorker and the Atlantic in 10 or 20 years, to have a career as a book writer, and so forth. And it does work quite successfully. I can just say that one of the courses I teach here, the one I'm probably most known for, is a seminar in book writing. And there was a question when I started this class: do journalism students here have enough time to read books, much less what kind of con game are we running, suggesting that people who've never been published before in many cases could write a book. But all these years later, 82 books coming out of that class have gone to contract, and about 75 of them or so have been published already. The rest are somewhere in the pipeline. The goal of the curriculum, as we've continued to adapt it in the way that Dean Cole was talking about, has been to prepare you for a media industry in which no longer are people in silos. When people like David and I were coming up, you would self-identify as, I'm a newspaper person or a magazine person or a TV person or a radio person. Even in the advent of digital journalism, people would say, I'm a digital concentrator. And our curriculum at that point reflected that. You declare a specialty and your classes would somewhat be tailored to that. What we've done, which I think is very correct in the last 5 years or 6 years, is say everything is driven by reporting, everything is driven by inquiry and a sense of ethics, and then above and beyond that, everyone needs to be versatile across the delivery systems. So there is no more concentrating in one delivery system. The way the curriculum is built, you're going to have courses that'll expose you to all forms, to print, to broadcast, to electronic, to digital, to data, to investigative. So you're going to come out with the versatility that's really the hallmark in the marketplace now. While we don't have in the MS program the ability to take classes elsewhere in the university, what we have is not only a really world-class faculty that, as Dean Cole said, is deeply invested in the teaching function, and that includes faculty members from the MA program like Professor Haydua as well, and faculty members from the PhD program like, Todd Gitlin and Andy Tucker. But also we have an ability to draw on outstanding adjuncts because we're in a media center of the world here, so that you're going to be taught by people who are not just excellent classroom instructors, but are busily doing the work themselves all the time and are modeling best practices in their work for you. In terms of what we look for, and after this I'll stop, I think the MS program works best for two types of people. It works terrifically well for someone who may not have done journalism and has an aha moment at whatever age that is. I've had students in the part-time program for whom it came at age 50. But the aha moment, now I know what I really want to do is be a journalist. Where do I go to learn how to do this work? And it also works well for those who've started to do journalism and feel like they've been stymied. If you're on a news organization and you feel like you're not getting the mentoring that you wanted to get, no one's making you better. Everyone you write for or broadcast for or do data sets for is satisfied with you being good, but doesn't worry about making you excellent because they have to worry about the people who are incompetent elsewhere in the news organization. That's a good time to come to Columbia, because this will give you the push, the mentoring, the great community of students here that will raise you to that next level. And yes, there's the payoff of the credential, there's the payoff of the network of alumni, of the connections professors have, but mostly it's the tremendous amount of skills that you'll develop here. That's the game changer for everyone who comes to Columbia. And one last thing, the other thing I've always said, there are no better students to teach than Columbia J School students. They'll ruin you for teaching anywhere else. And part of the reason is, and this is, I think, a real recommendation to you, it's an ungraded program. Okay, it's pass-fail with a few students getting honors. You have to really try to fail. You basically have to plagiarize or just not turn in assignments. It's pretty egregious what you need to do to fail. What it means is that there's no grade grubbing here. There's a lot less invidious competition. There's much more of a sense of a community in which, success and achievement is available to everyone, and you're not worried about what your grade point is going to be. And as a result, we as professors were able to edit you rigorously, to be really demanding, because when we give a markup or do a critique of your reel, you're not thinking, gee, what if I get a C+ on my transcript? That's just not part of the sensibility at all. It's all about, now I want to get better.
Thanks very much, Sam. Okay, what I'd like to do is take 5 minutes of questions, and then we're going to move to the student panel or career services? Student panel. Okay. We have somebody who has to leave to catch a flight in a little bit, so we're trying to get that all in. Brett, do we have something from
We have a live stream question.
Okay.
Yes. And it's for Giannina, actually. So there's a student interested in both data journalism and health reporting. Is that possible to do in the program, or are there ways to incorporate that if someone's interested in kind of the intersection of those paths?
Thank you. Yes, if you're not a data journalism student, you still have plenty of opportunities to acquire the skills. We have Data 1, Data 2, Introduction to Computational Journalism, so any student from any program or concentration can take those classes. Now, in terms of health, we have, if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2 seminars in the spring that are focused on investigating health related topics, but also I would say the best way to approach it would be through the master's project, because you can choose any topic you want, and it's the best way to combine exploration on health related topics using data. And by the way, there is a lot of data on health, unexplored, not just in the U.S. but across the world. So it's a good combination, and there are, as I say, many ways to focus and concentrate on it.
Another way, depending on the level of professional experience that you have, is to take a look also at the MA program in the science specialization, which also covers health, medicine, technology, that sort of thing. So there are a number of different possibilities, and you can get in touch with us in the admissions office, and we can talk further with you about what would be most appropriate for you. Please.
Hi there, I'm Karen, and I'm a Canadian reporter looking at the MA program. I'm currently working in and around food systems, particularly fisheries and agriculture. And in my reporting, I've discovered it's really interdisciplinary. It can get really complex really quickly. And I'm wondering how much latitude, guidance, mentorship is available when choosing our out-of-program courses, because I'm almost equally as interested in the data as I am in a business class, as I am in like an ecology class, and I'm really struggling to see what my future might look like, I guess.
Yeah. Well, depending on what concentration you are in, one of the two faculty members for that concentration would devote time to working with you to help you choose your classes. In fact, we have to sign off on them. We have to approve the choices. And in addition, there's a director of the program named Tally Woodward, who's also available, and who's every term makes a study of the various courses and the new courses that are available around across campus, and she would work with you too. So you have a pool of like 3 people you're available to you.
I have a quick follow-up. So would I be in touch with her now to get a sense of what that looks like? So I include that in my application essays, or is that after admission?
No, I think she'd be happy to talk to you now, and
Okay.
I could give you her email address before we both leave today.
I saw it on the website.
It's on the website, Tally Woodward.
And also, if you would like to talk with me before you leave today, I have some other suggestions for you as well. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Natalie, and I have a question about the data journalism program and about the variety of backgrounds that you see applicants come in with and what you've seen been successful, and if it's not a specific type of background, if it's like an overarching trait, like a specific interest.
Thank you. Well, I forgot to mention that we started with the data concentration as part of the MS program, and this is the 3rd year we're teaching the concentration. So we've seen a variety of backgrounds, people coming from science and business, but also investigative reporters who want to use data to investigate. This year we have a very interesting class. There's a group interested in entrepreneurship and how to use data and data journalism to, think about different business models in the future. So it's very diverse, but I would say the common pattern is the understanding of what this technology and particularly data can do to expand the possibilities. You cannot interview 28 million people, but you can interrogate 28 million records in seconds. So, I mean, that kind of power could be applied to anything, sports, entertainment, and that's what we have in class now, and hopefully next year as well.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm interested in this MS part-time program. So my question is for students who still have a particular interest area, for example, like business and finance. I know that even if not required by the program to take curriculum from other schools, but how much of a flexibility or possibilities that the program allows students to further their understanding or the knowledge in a specific area?
I think what you would do if you had an interest in any particular subject area is take one of the seminars that's offered or one of the 7-week writing classes that's offered as part of the MS program with that area. So, for instance, in the writing prerequisite that everyone takes, everyone starts with a 7-week reporting class, which is kind of delivery system neutral. It's really how to report, how to analyze, how to think, how to weigh things in an intellectually honest manner. Then one of the requirements beyond that is a writing class of 7 weeks, and many of those writing classes have subject orientations. There is one already in business. There's one in, death and grief. There are several ones in long form, and so on. Then there are also in the second semester, or this would lay out slightly differently over a 2-year program, but a seminar you'll take and a workshop you'll take. Each of those are about 15 weeks in length, and those are in many cases oriented towards content. So there is a business and finance journalism seminar that you could take. And similarly, if you wanted to write about arts and culture in the MS program, you'd be able to take an arts and culture seminar. You'd be able to take a science journalism seminar. There are a whole range of these, a race and ethnicity seminar, a seminar covering social movements and so forth. So that's the way in the MS program, whether you're full-time or part-time, you could get deeper into content. The other thing you can do is everyone in the MS program does a master's project, which is basically the equivalent of either a long kind of back-of-the-book magazine story, something in the range of 6,000 to 10,000 words, or the equivalent of like a 20-minute or so half-hour radio or video documentary, or an extensive web presentation. And a lot of times students will choose their faculty advisor for that project based on having an interest in a particular area. And then you can choose a topic. So if you're interested in business, it would make all the sense in the world for you to pair up with a professor who has some expertise in that area as your advisor or an adjunct, and to do a master's project that would encourage you to go deeply into business and finance, economics as a subject.
Thank you.
I think you can also look on the website and you'll see which faculty members are teaching the business journalism courses. So people like Jim Stewart. Jim also teaches in the MS program. Bill Gruskin, both Jim's at the New York Times now, but both he and Bill came from the Wall Street Journal. So there are a number of people who are business reporting specialists on the faculty, and you can study with them. Another thing that I think is notable about our faculty, that even if you happen not to be in a classroom with a faculty member, but if that person has particular expertise in something that you're reporting on, it's absolutely fine for you to go and talk with that person to get some additional guidance, even if you're not studying directly with that person.
I also had a question for Professor Friedman about the MS program. You were just speaking about the master's theses, and I was wondering, how are students paired with advisors for that project?
This has changed somewhat, and I think I may need to defer a little bit to Christine on this, but I think that there's a way now to request professors based on their chosen content strong suits. That may be a little bit less clear with the part-time students because you don't have as many faculty advising over the summer, which is when the part-timers do their master's projects, although I personally advise over the summer. But for the full-timers, you have access to a broad array of full-time faculty and experienced adjuncts who designate certain areas in which they feel they have expertise. And then, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, you sort of ballot to be matched up with someone who'll be in your area.
That's correct, yeah.
I'm so relieved.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Perrin. I also had a question for Mr. Friedman. You talked about the aha moment that group of people who would apply have, and for those who do not have a specific professional or college education specified in journalism, that might not have writing samples from that area specifically, but are still interested and passionate about it now, what would your recommendation be for the writing samples that they would submit within their application, like examples of?
Well, I've read, first of all, part of the faculty commitment here is that even though we have terrific people in the admissions office, Christine, David, Brett, who you've met this morning, all of our faculty read applications. There's not anyone who applies here whose application isn't read by at least one, and frequently more than one, faculty person. We've also, as a faculty, decided never to require GREs, because the argument has been that's basically requiring people to have enough money to take a prep class or work with a tutor. and it has a class and implicitly often racial bias built in, so we don't do that. And in terms of your writing, I've read everything from people submitting play scripts, academic papers, poetry, blog entries, and I don't think we favor or disfavor whether it's published work from your college newspaper or not. Look, every individual faculty member reads somewhat differently, and that's why we cross-read, and why our internal process even has a fail-safe mechanism, which is that if the same applicant gets rated really highly by one reader and drastically low from another, we always go to a third person, to get an additional insight. So, so it's not a built-in advantage to have a clip from your college paper. It can be good if you did it. It can also raise a question of how much editing did this go through. That has a downside as well. I think there are a couple of key things, though. We need to get a sense that you have an inquiring mind, that you're truly intellectually curious, that you're truly interested in and knowledgeable about the world, that you truly are consuming journalism already, that you're truly passionate about going into this. And over the years, I've seen people come here with all kinds of unlikely backgrounds who've never written a word before, and and have gone on to fantastic careers, in book writing on major news organizations. I've had people who have been real estate brokers, computer coders back before that was such a common route into journalism, Christian missionaries, internal affairs police officers, playwrights, bartenders, dancers, professional athletes, military personnel, you name it. Every kind of background is present here. But regardless of the background and regardless of whether you've published work before, it's those other elements that are so important. Because I can tell you from reading applications, it doesn't take you long when someone says in their essay, I'm a news junkie, I follow everything, and then you start to read some of their other writing and see the vast areas of ignorance they have, to say that it's one thing to walk the walk, or to talk the talk, it's another to walk the walk. So you want to really be consistent throughout and to be able to back up everything you say about your passion for this.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our faculty panelists this morning. You guys were wonderful, as always. And we're going to move next to a student panel, which I know that will be of interest to all of you as well. So Giannina, David, Sam, thank you very much.
I'll ask our students, I think our students are here, so come on up, thank you. And for those of you who had additional questions for the faculty, if they're still going to be around, you're more than welcome to ask them before they head out. We can also provide their contact information as well. My name is Brett Sione. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions for the Journalism School, and we'll move on to our student panel of current students representing our different programs. And we really want to make this more of a question and answer as much as we can, so to allow you to ask our students about their experiences and what they're doing now. But the first thing I would like to do is just ask them to introduce themselves, let you know what program they're in and maybe where they're from.
Hi, my name is Maddie Foley. I am a first-year part-time MS student. I'm originally from Cleveland, but moved here for the program from Chicago.
I'm Justin Lynch. I'm in the MA program, the politics one, and I'm from upstate New York.
I'm Stephanie Tangkilisan. I'm from Jakarta, Indonesia, so I'm an international student, and I'm in the MS General program.
Great, thanks. Like I said, we'll try to make this as much of a question and answer as we can. So I'll pose the first question, and then I encourage all of you to think of some things that you definitely want to know and ask about the student experience, because for some of you thinking about applying this year, this could be the one and only opportunity you have to speak to current students. So I definitely encourage you to do that. But so I'll pose the first question, and I guess for each of you, if you could each address what your day-to-day experience is like. Since you're all in different programs, it's going to be a little bit different. What types of projects you might be working on, what you're doing in the classroom, and just to give a kind of a general overview of what your experience on a day-to-day basis is like here at the school.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I am a part-time student, so I work 2 part-time jobs. So I write for Bustle 3 times a week, and then I also do an additional job out in Brooklyn. And the way that the part-time program is structured right now, I'm taking 1 class a week, so I have class Mondays, 6 to 9, and it's Dean Cole's Investigative Techniques course, and then usually the rest of the week is spent working during the day and then getting all of my other work done in the evening. I have 1 or 2 pieces from previous classes that I'm still revising and working on shopping those around and getting those submitted as well.
So I'm in the MA program, and so basically the whole course or program revolves around a big thesis, and hopefully it's published in a big magazine at the end. So it's a lot of us working on that. So I'm going to Myanmar and Bangladesh in 2 weeks, I think. And so every student has one kind of seminar that's 6 hours a week in their section. And then we have a skills course, we have an outside course. I'm taking one in the law school, so that's a lot of fun. And it's a lot more work than I imagined, I think. It's a lot of reading, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, one of the things I didn't really realize coming in was like Columbia is an Ivy League school, which I should have thought. But you can go to a lot of events at night, and there's like people from government and other forms of public life. You can just kind of have a coffee or beer with them, and it's great.
So it's really hard to talk about my day-to-day because there's no typical day in J school, so I'm going to run you shortly through my week. Like Madeline, I have class all of Monday, so I'm taking video 1, so if anyone has video questions, you can ask me that. And then I'm taking Writing for the Year, which is a semi-writing audio production class. So I have all class 9 to 8 on Mondays, and then Tuesday to Thursday I don't have any class, which sounds awesome, but really is not because I'm still hustling through the entire week. I basically would wake up, try to text my sources, try to figure out the schedule of the day, try to see if there's any interesting events or community boards that's going on in New York, any protest or anything that's going on. I am also really working on my master's thesis, which is in criminal justice. So I spend a lot of time in federal court, like clerk and like looking at dockets. I also spend time shooting video, and like if you see me in my bulky bag, that's because I have to shoot something really interesting later. So I also work weekends, basically. And Fridays are essentials for MS General students. And I think you guys have MS General Essentials?
We do, but like next.
Next
year.
year. Next year. So MS Essentials is that we have 4 essential things that we should know as journalists, which is law, ethics, business, and history of journalism. And yeah, it's basically a lot of calling people, a lot of just showing up. Like I was writing a series on homelessness, and I came to New York with not knowing anybody. So it was me like going in front of a homeless shelter and like waiting around there for hours, like trying to get people to talk to me. And that's like what my day's like, but it's awesome. It's great.
So we understand for many of you here that you may be in the process of deciding if journalism school is for you, what you might be doing currently in your career, maybe transitioning into something else. I guess, I don't know what for each of our students here, what your thought process was if you came to an information session before you applied, but if you could think about if you were on the other side of the audience and thinking why you came to journalism school and why you decided to take this step and make this investment, and obviously hoping to better your career, but why is this something that you considered and ultimately decided to do?
Yeah, so my path here was a little bit meandering. I graduated from my undergraduate program in 2013 with a degree in creative writing, and had a lot of interest in journalism, but felt like I didn't have enough I didn't feel qualified to be applying for those jobs. So I spent 2 years doing arts administration for PBS, and then realized that I would much rather be making the programs that other people are talking about, like distribution rates for. And so I started freelancing and working kind of just a lot of side hustles. And after 2 years of doing that, I realized that I really needed kind of a boost in terms of growing my multimedia portfolio, speaking with a lot more, like really long-time journalists, building up, really understanding kind of the ethical implications of journalism. It just felt like the number of things that I really wanted to understand and to accomplish, I wasn't going to be able to do that on my own. I didn't have the time or the financial resources to do that. So I decided to, my thinking was Columbia is my top choice. I'll apply there. It also doesn't require the GRE, so if that doesn't work out, then I'll regroup and I'll take the GRE and I'll apply to some other programs. But it was also, I'm from the Midwest, the idea of living in New York City and being where it's this center of media and really kind of having this unbelievable wealth of resources was another big important element to me.
So I worked in East Africa for 2 years as a journalist, and so I worked in South Sudan mostly, and so I came here because I guess a year ago I was arrested and deported from South Sudan, so I was in a transition for my career, and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do next, and a friend did the program 2 years before, and she suggested that I look into it. And I was going back and forth between should I do it, should I not, because I was making a lot of progress in what I was doing. And so I decided to do the program because even when I talked with, folks who were successful, they wish that they did the program as well. And one of the things that I realized is, there are a lot of journalists out there who can kind of struggle and grind it out, but there weren't a lot of good journalists who could really kind of give noteworthy stuff. And I think particularly with South Sudan, it was an issue that nobody could really tell properly, and I knew that I didn't really have the tools to tell this crazy story properly. And I wanted to, make sure that the next time this kind of crisis happened, I was able to kind of tell it in a way that I think it deserves. And so the MA program, it revolves around, giving journalists the tools to tell those kinds of stories that are really complex and really hard. One of the first days of class, we talked about how, what are the things that journalists did wrong in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq and the financial crisis, and covering the Trump election, which I guess are some of the big failures of journalism, right? Failing to predict these kind of three things. And so that's kind of what the program revolves around. And I guess I'm going to Myanmar and Bangladesh in a couple weeks. So it's another shot at getting it right. So I don't know.
So my dad was a journalist, and he didn't want me to be a journalist for a while because where I'm from, there's a lot more complexity in terms of what you can write and what you can't write, and you can get in trouble for writing certain things. So I took an undergrad. I went to the University of Chicago, and I focused on political science and philosophy, and was really interested in mass violence and genocide. So that was my background. Didn't think I wanted to do a PhD, and then I thought it was being in Chicago, everyone was going to banking and consulting and all of that track. So I was okay, let's do finance. So I was at Morgan Stanley, and then I went back to family business. And I just found it really miserable. I just wasn't happy, and I spent most of my free time reading New York Times and New Yorker and all of this stuff, and I was this is what I want to do, and this sounds great, but I couldn't do that. And so the next best thing was I made English language podcast, Deluka podcast, covering Indonesian politics, society, and feminism. And then I found out about Columbia Journalism School, and I was like, this makes sense. Like I did my high school paper. I've always really liked writing, and I thought I should just apply and really figure out how. Also, like side tangent, the reporting on Indonesia by a lot of Western media really bothers me. And like if you talk to a lot of international students, there's always this correspondent at a certain publication that annoys you or annoys me. So that's partly why I wanted to be able to be that Indonesian correspondent for like Western publication, and I don't think that's where I'm trying to be, and I don't think I can do that without Columbia Journalism School. And this is the only school I applied to, actually. The biggest thing is like what you were saying. You don't know what you don't know. Like I also I've worked in Indonesia in journalism before, also like freelancing and stuff, and I didn't know really what I didn't know, essentially. And it's through my reporting class and my amazing reporting professors, they changed my mind to what are the necessary components, like how do you fact check, how do you source out different things. And shout out to my current reporting professors, Dale Maharaj and Keith Gasson, who are both amazing people. You should look them up and reach out to them if you're interested. And they give you, I've just never had so much feedback in my life. Like I write 800-word story and they would send me 2 pages of feedback. Like they care about you so much in terms of your growth as a person and a journalist. Like my reporting class is over, but I still meet my reporting professor every week to he looks at my cover letter and we talk about how I can get to where I want to be in the future. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. Hope that's given you a good insight and some background into our students and what their experiences are like. So I would like to open it up for questions and whatever you'd like to ask our students. Again, please step up to the mic and so everybody can hear and we'll be able to answer those. Sure.
Hi, I'm Tyler. So my question is, when I talk to my reporter friends about Columbia Journalism School, they're like, no, don't do it. And I wanted to find out what your calculus is for taking on debt to go into this industry, if you have done that. Maddie, I suspect you might have.
Yeah. I mean, partial. So I do the part-time program
Right.
in part because, like I said earlier, the prospect of not earning money for a year was I was like, nope, okay, can't do that. So, I mean, I guess I feel like this is, I rationalize it mostly because this is, I constantly remind myself, I spent so many years thinking about when I am a journalist or feeling kind of like I'm treading water or, not doing what I really want to do. I feel like I'm constantly reminding myself that you're in where you have wanted to be for years. You're here, you're publishing stuff, you're writing, you're speaking with these really incredible professors and working journalists. I mean, yeah, I think pretty much everybody in my program is stomaching that is not easy. And having to kind of work underneath that a little is but it's such a huge opportunity. It's something that I'm willing to sacrifice a lot for, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big question that everyone has, right? My thought process was I talked with a lot of folks, who were correspondents at the Wall Street Journal and the Post, and so kind of what I got out of talking with a bunch of them is that it was a long-term kind of investment, and that's how I looked at it, right? Everyone's different, and it's a lot of money. And I thought about it that way, how it's a long-term investment. And, if they were working there and they wished that they did it, then I thought that it was a good thing. And I, made it made a guess and a bet that it was going to pay off in the period of 10 to 20 years, right? So not everyone, I think, I mean, that was just my personal guess, and like, I hope I'm right. So, and I mean, yeah, but that's a good question, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question that I got a really generous scholarship, so that's not something I had to wrestle with. But I have a lot of friends who think about it, and I even have friends who've worked at the Chicago Tribune for years, and the way they justify it and the way my friends justify it is if you find a reason to go here that, for example, in investigative and data journalism that you wouldn't have otherwise gained skills to do that, I think that's one way you think about it, like gaining new skills that would get you somewhere that you would not have otherwise been able to do. So like especially with people who already have some experience, I think that's something they need to justify and think about a little bit more. But if you think about it in terms of, pivoting, for example, my friend who was at the Tribune, she was in the Metro and did, reported murders and stuff, and she wanted to go into investigative journalism, and that's how she justified. It's harder in current newsrooms to have all that resource to become better in a certain way. Yeah.
Great, thank you guys.
Hi guys. My question is, Professor Friedman mentioned a strong mentorship program, and I was wondering, have you guys had that experience that the professors really work on mentoring? Is there anything specific you would call out as something you think is unique to Columbia in how they mentor their students?
Yeah, I already talked a little bit about my, I think I'm really lucky. I've had really great relationships with my professor, and sometimes it's also like how much you make of it and how much you try to reach out to professors. And like most professors here are very willing to, even if you're not taking their classes, if you email them, I'm like, can I come to your office hours? And they're like, yeah, come. And we'll really help you. In terms of mentorship, it's like looking at, for example, we're all, I think, earlier on, so I can't speak for, jobs in the future, but, like they really take time to work on your writing skills and your video skills and do beyond what their office calls for, right? So, yeah, like my professor Dale is looking into my cover letters and my resume and like real, things that I know career services. Hi, Gina. Gina's my advisor. Also, like, it's Gina's territory, but, like, he is also really invested in that mentorship. And my other professor, Ann Cooper, is also, always willing to introduce me to, other journalists in her field that is of interest to me. So it's always, like, your professor's networks can become your networks, essentially.
The journalists who mentor me, who are not affiliated with Columbia, they look up to Steve Call, who's the dean, and I don't think he's here in the room, so I can say this, but Steve Call is obviously like,
boss.
Yeah, like he's probably one of the best journalists and editors who of recent memory. So he is my advisor, and so I think that for me, having someone who has been in similar situations and has done a lot of security reporting, just to kind of ask questions, and things that are very specific to what I was going through. And so in October, I published a long investigation for the Associated Press that was unrelated to Columbia, and there was a lot of scary stuff going on. There was like the U.S. government was breaking the law, and there was a lot of wrongdoing by the UN and the U.S. government, and so it was getting really hairy, particularly as a freelancer, because I wasn't a part of AP, and so like the folks at Columbia helped out because I had some really serious questions about sourcing, and it was a very nerve-wracking time for me, and so they kind of walked me through some of the stuff and that I need to know, and it was questions that I think only experienced people in the field can answer. I mean, every journalist goes through it, really kind of nerve-wracking stuff. And so it was I was lucky to have people who were there holding my hand, and just to know that, like, Steve Call's writing a book should be out in February about Afghanistan and Pakistan, and like, he's going through this times 1,000. So like, it's good to know that like someone else is in the same boat as you, but has been through this with everyone else, with a bunch of other journalists, go through it themselves, and like knows what to do and how to keep a cool head. So yeah.
Right. And I hate to say we have time for 2 questions, I'm sorry to say, and then I will ask if the students are available as soon as they leave the panel, if they can stick around for a few minutes, and anybody who wants to speak with them individually, you're definitely more than welcome to do that. So whoever was next.
Hi, my name is Michael, and Dean Cole mentioned a lot about how you guys are learning investigative reporting and how to access public records and doing FOIA requests, and I was wondering if you get any experience or mentorship about doing that same skill set but in a non-American media system. So like, for example, like just doing it like in other countries, basically.
Go ahead.
Most of what I'm doing is international reporting, so I mean, it applies to most countries. Like the FOIA stuff is specific to the U.S., but like the kind of techniques are the same. Like most countries have, or some countries have a similar FOIA process, but it's the same techniques here as they are in the world, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm in the investigative reporting course which is exclusively for part-timers right now, and yeah, I mean, like the majority of what we are doing, we each kind of at the start of the class, we each pick like an investigative topic that we want to pursue for the entirety of the course. I think most people are doing things that are domestic, but thus far, like any questions that anybody has had, Dean Cole's been like, oh yeah, can answer that like pretty immediately, has a lot of experience in like accessing, doing kind of like the equivalent of FOIAs in like Denmark or, England or whatever.
Cool, thanks.
Oh yeah, Sheila Cornell, the investigative professor, is from Philippines, and she can probably know that I can't speak much because I haven't taken investigative techniques. I've only seen the PowerPoints.
Yeah, and one thing I would encourage you to do is look through the faculty. All of the faculty are listed there with different areas of specialization, including international focus and where they've worked internationally and the types of exposures that they've had that they're obviously bringing to the classroom. So even though most everything is going to be New York based here, especially within the MS program, the opportunities to interact with folks, and still in such a international community that we are, you'll definitely get those sorts of exposures throughout the program.
Yeah. Oh yeah, from like what I've audited in Janina's class, she goes into different countries and just even looking at, the dark and like how to do special type Google searches and stuff. She knows how to do pretty much anything. So yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for being here to answer our questions. I was curious if you can speak more to the tools, software, programs that you're learning about or have learned about already that are really helping you push out what you're reporting in a big way to how users are reading and consuming it today. Like very, very specifically.
Do you mean multimedia, or do you mean like investigative, or both?
Both, I guess, for everyone. But
okay. I'm going to talk about the multimedia stuff because that's more of what I'm doing. So in audio, we're using Adobe Audition. So we learn how to record with, Tascam, the sound booth, etc. And then in video, we use Adobe Premiere Pro. We'll probably get a chance to learn After Effects as well. We have not yet. And we also did it for the Multimedia Bootcamp iMovie, which is not great. So you learn Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Audition, Adobe Lightroom as well if you're doing photography. And I think that's it for multimedia. Is that right? Did I miss anything?
I think that's what we covered.
Okay.
Investigative. Like
Anything?
Data stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the MA program particularly, I think it's important to keep in mind that it's a blend between journalism and then your concentration, right? So it's like really half and half, and I think people, like it really is half and half. And so with the data stuff and kind of that investigative stuff in particular, I mean, everyone has to learn. We have a data class, and so some folks learn Python and like the coding languages. I don't, because I'm afraid of Excel, but that's fine. And so, yeah, but we have to learn it, I guess. So it's helpful to have investigative journalists to kind of hold your hand through some of this stuff. We have someone from ProPublica teach our seminar, and just walks us through how he got his sources, and he's like you probably read his stuff. He's doing a lot of stuff like the Trump investigation. So when you read his pieces, and you'll see how he got there, and that's just helpful to know, like how this stuff is coming out and what he's doing. And
So you learn more advanced techniques on Excel, data miner, and there's another one I forgot.
Those are the two that we're focusing on.
Yeah. And if you're learning equipment-wise, we use the Canon C100 video cameras. There's the Fujifilm X-T2 for the photo, Canon DSLR cameras, the Tascams and the Zooms is like the equipment you will learn how to use.
Okay, great. I want to thank all of our students for taking time out of their Saturdays to be with us and share their experiences. Like I said, I think we had some additional questions, so someone might pull you aside on the way by if that's okay.
Is this
if you're
being
able.
live streamed?
It is.
So if anyone on live stream wants to ask me any questions, my email is sat2190@columbia.edu. If anyone wants to email me, especially international students who can't be here, I'm happy to do that. It's SAT, like the dreaded admissions test, 2190.
Great.
I'm on Twitter. Just search Justin Lynch, and then you can find my email on my Twitter. So, or just tweet at me, and I won't block you. So.
Yeah, part-timers, anybody interested in chatting. My email is mcf2179@columbia.edu.
Great. Thank you all for sharing. So definitely feel free to reach out to them after today if you're not able to get in contact with them. So thank you. Appreciate it. And I'd like to bring up now Gina Boubion from our Career Services Office. She's got some information for you along those lines. Then we'll be back again with some more.
Good morning. Oops. Hold on a second. Scroll through this really quickly. Okay. Okay, good morning. And I will also be answering questions, so some of those questions that you didn't ask this last time, I might have the answer, I hope I do. So it's very nice to see you. I am part of the career development team here at Columbia, and we guide students from day one on, what kinds of companies they can target, what their resumes ought to look like that speak the language of editors in the business. We plan dozens and dozens of workshops. We bring in employers all year long. We have interview days, and we also put on the Career Expo, which you probably have had time to see. There's a video on the site that I encourage you to watch. It is the largest pure journalism job fair in the country, and for the last 4 years or so, we've had about 150 media companies attend, and they bring about 300 recruiters. So with 300 students and 300 recruiters, it's a really busy day, and students do a lot of interviewing. So first, a reality check. We don't know what the job market's going to be like in May 18 or May 19. There is so much change going on. We don't know which companies will reinvent themselves, or which will bite the dust, or which will rise from the ashes and try something new, or expand or cut back. It is a really tumultuous time in the industry, but it's also a really exciting time, and our students seem to regularly come out on top no matter what is going on. I'm going to share with you some statistics from 2017, the class of 2017, to give you an idea of what our students faced at graduation, but also it'll tell you something about the industry at large. So as of graduation, 73% of the students had plans lined up, and that is jobs, internships, going on to another degree program, or freelancing, or a couple of people always launch a media startup of their own. They've come here, with an entrepreneurial spirit, and they sort of make it happen or move towards that while they're here. This figure inches up every week of summer. By July, it was like near 80%, 83%, and it went on from there, and it's still going up, and it's in flux too, because a lot of students take internships, which there's a big changeover period in August and September. So it's hard to keep tabs on, but it's definitely true that our students sort of inexorably climb in their careers and land. So keep in mind, this is a figure as of graduation. We take our measure right around graduation because we can get 100% reporting. We can track down everybody who, hasn't responded to a series of questions. And so it really is a really good database. So I just want to point out how the statistic is gathered, because it's important. Other schools at Columbia will, advertise much higher figures on their website, but you have to pay attention to when they're taking their measure. For instance, the law school has 97, 98% employed, but it's as of 11 months after graduation. The business school is at, 90 days after graduation. So as you're looking around at other programs or competitor schools, look on their website. It should be on their website, or if not, you should interrogate those numbers when they take that measure, and what the figure is that they're publishing and how many people are in the sample. So our sample is 100% students, and it's as of graduation. So naturally, it's going to seem at first blush lower possibly. So I want to show you a really interesting graphic. This is information that we gather from students as they're graduating. We ask, what are you doing? And as you can see, I hope you can see it all the way from the back of the room. It's a distribution of jobs across different media platforms. And what you're seeing is a concentration of positions in three areas: newspaper only and their digital staff, pure digital only, and broadcast, which is audio and visual. Video operations plus online. So what's interesting is, the red line at the top, that's the digital only line, and it is completely intuitive. Everyone knows that this has been on the increase, for years now, and it has, sort of kept ahead of newspaper and broadcast jobs, but with some pretty wild fluctuations. The purple line right below the red line is the broadcast line, and we did see a little spike last year. Whether it's a trend, we don't know. We have to wait until next year. As you can see, if you follow that purple line back to 2010, it just really goes all over the place. The newspaper line is the dark blue line under that, and I love this because it shows that newspapers are not completely dead. There's still a lot of hiring going on in newspapers, and last year we saw this drop. So again, don't know if it's a trend. We have to see. What we've been seeing is all this rocky action, so we'll have to see. The green line is magazine jobs or platform, I should say, and their online staff, which had been definitely on the decline, and suddenly a little spike. Again, we'll have to see. The blue line at the very bottom, the aqua turquoise line, that's the wire services line, and that definitely has been sort of sliding down. Part of that, we think, is in the beginning, 2010, Dow Jones Newswires and Wall Street Journal had two separate huge wire operations basically around the world, and they consolidated. And it made sense, two reporters covering the exact same beat in Hong Kong. Now there's just one. So that line is, somewhat accounted for with that explanation. But the other wire services that come after our students, and there are a lot of them. I mean, it's Reuters, it's AFP, it's the Associated Press, Wall Street Journal. So now I'm going to show you, it's a busy chart, but basically the takeaway is, what we ask students is what's your main job duty? And I find this fascinating because you just saw the slide showing the distribution and platform, but what this slide shows you is that no matter what, most of our students are hired to be text reporters, reporters and writers, even if it's at CNN International or CBS.com. So it's, they're writing. Our students are mostly hired to do writing. Video and audio had a big increase last year, and you've all read about this quote-unquote pivot to video. We definitely saw that at the expo last year with employers asking for video skills as part of everyone's toolbox, and students do learn that here. And so we did see an increase. Nevertheless, it does come in a rather distant second place to the main job duty. And this is partly a result of the jobs in New York. For the big brands are going to be hiring, students just out of J school to do the fast reporting, sort of the news editing kind of jobs. The writing of 3, 4, 5 stories a day, posting on the website and all that. These are, at least in New York, these are oftentimes like entry level kinds of jobs. So that's what's going on. And this just shows you sort of what's been happening the last few years. Okay. The question of what's the value of the degree. We know that a lot of companies are really fond of journalism school students from Columbia, such to the extent that 11 people from last year's class went to CNN. 6 went to CBS News, 5 each went to Bloomberg, 5 to Forbes, 5 to Reuters. So it's like that. There are a lot of companies in this business, especially abroad, that only know of Columbia and love our students. So that's the talent. That's the talent of the students. That's the brand of the school. That's the training that you get. There are a lot of newspapers. I was just on the phone with the managing editor from the Miami Herald. They hire 3 or 4 students every single year from here to be in their internship class, and the class is like 12 people. So it's Columbia heavy down there because they've had such a good experience. They really know that they can count on the skill set that they're getting with our students. So again, this is as of graduation. These numbers increase and change as the summer goes on. Where you can get this information on your own, go to LinkedIn. So I did some quick LinkedIn searching. It's fantastic. There's a group called Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism LinkedIn, and you can sort through the alumni. And I would encourage you to do that for Columbia and for any school that you're interested in. Just type in, your dream publication or your dream company or the location where you want to work and see what comes up. It's important research for you to do because this is a big investment. So whatever you decide, do your research. So we have at least 12 at BuzzFeed News, 20 at Vice, way more than 50 at the New York Times. My LinkedIn was not going from page to page like usual. It was a little glitch yesterday, so I know it's higher. But this is what it looks like. So I would encourage you to do this for everywhere that you're interested in, and that includes abroad. So no matter where news breaks, our students are right in on the action, and so we've had so much news in this last semester. It's been head spinning, correct? So, I was just reading all the news as all of you were, listening to the news and seeing our students' names, our grads, just pop up on every major story. I wanted to just now show you a few of these stories and give you a tiny bit of background on each student, so it'll help you sort of understand the trajectory of people before Columbia, while they're at Columbia, and then after Columbia. Paulina Villegas is a Mexican national who, after graduation, she was from Monterrey, Mexico, and she had worked in a nonprofit journalism site in Mexico, based in Monterrey, and then she came to the J School. Her English wasn't perfect; it was okay, but she didn't want to get a job here in New York. She wanted to go abroad, and so she went down to Clarín in Buenos Aires, which is an exclusive internship program that we have. Clarín, which is a major news organization in Argentina. And then after that, she went back to Mexico City and picked up again with this small nonprofit investigative website. Well, then one day, the bureau chief from the Mexico City bureau calls us and asks, we need a Mexican national to work in our bureau. And that's how they found Paulina. And now, her name, you might recognize it because she's been in every major story out of Mexico for the last 3 years, including this latest story, which was went viral because it was very poignant. I'm sure you remember this story. So moving on, the hurricanes. We had students from Houston to Savannah, Georgia, covering the hurricanes. Breaking news, this was an MA in the science program, Isabella, who was from New Jersey, and she had really no newsroom experience at all when she got into the MA program. Because she was on sort of the medical school track for years, she had internships in global health, in clinics, in writing scientific, material. So she was sort of headed towards that direction. And then she just started freelancing, fell in love with journalism, and with her vast knowledge of science, she got into the MA science program and wanted to learn the journalism side of things. And so she took this newsroom job at the Miami New Times down in Miami with absolutely no experience covering breaking news. And then boom, this hurricane. So she covered the hurricane, but then since then, she's had a bunch of stories related to the quality, the water quality, and the health services delivery, and all these. There's going to be so many stories out of the hurricane for quite a while, and so there she is, and she's just having the time of her life, doing exactly what she had hoped to do. Then, this was the Las Vegas shooting, and we had several students, and I went to the LA Times to see who was covering it for the LA Times, and I immediately saw Aline's byline. She had a double byline throughout this story because it was such a big story that this, it's like you have one main writer in the newsroom probably taking notes from her. She was the one who went to Vegas to gather notes and feed them to the reporter, and so she was just on the front page writing this story. Her deal was she came to Columbia straight from undergrad. She was on the staff of the Daily Bruin at UCLA. She had little internships at small, Armenian community newspapers in Los Angeles, and then she came to Columbia, wanted to go home after J school, so she moved back to California and freelanced a bit that summer. And then in the fall, the LA Times offered her an internship, and she's been there ever since, just doing breaking news. It's her hometown, so she hit the ground running. She went from there to the California wine country to cover the forest fires. She's been very, very busy out in California. Christina Peterson, this is yesterday, I looked to see at the Wall Street Journal, just wondering who's covering, what's going on in DC right now, and Christina's name pops up. She was in college, she interned at the San Francisco Bay Guardian. She worked at a small paper in Palo Alto called the Palo Alto Daily, and then she came here and she freelanced her classwork while she was here for small little, neighborhood newspapers, and she got an internship at Dow Jones, which ended up being, she was hired by the Wall Street Journal a short time after that, and now she covers Congress for the Wall Street Journal. Politico Brussels is a big office that has a bunch of our grads, and our MA politics grad from Germany, Janos Delker, is their correspondent in Berlin. And so he has been reporting, the story of the government there and the refugee crisis and the terrorist attacks. He covers basically everything in Germany for Politico. And Janos was quite accomplished. He had been working for the big organizations, big media organizations in Germany, Der Spiegel, Deutsche Welle, and freelancing. And he was obsessed in particular with income inequality. And he came here and he took his outside classes in subjects related to income inequality and race and poverty in the MA politics concentration. He wrote his master's thesis on a fatal prison riot in Mississippi, and that was a private prison, and that story ran 8 months after graduation, he sold it to The Intercept. So that is what happened there. And he met Politico, the editor, Matthew Kaminsky, came to the J School. He came to New York on business and made a swoop down by Columbia, and he interviewed a bunch of MAs and hired a couple of them. So that's all I wanted to share with you right now. I thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them about what I might have left out, and I'm sure I know I left out a lot. No one wants to know about salaries? Okay, I'll tell you. Okay, so salaries are not, this is journalism, okay? This is not finance, this is not investment banking. But, this is a job that, the salaries that we're seeing out of the recent years, internships range from $10 an hour to $1,200 a week. It's a huge range. The most common range we're seeing is like $600, $700 a week, maybe $650, and these are internships. Now, internships are the most likely outcome of J School. This is not specific to Columbia. This is not specific to 2017. This has been the case forever, and that is just because it's a system of mentorship and job training and internships in the United States. These are not internships like they have in other countries that are 1 week long, visits to a newsroom and you don't get to write anything. These are paid positions that, you're filling in for someone on vacation for summer and you are expected to hit the ground running, and editors are eyeballing our students for full-time positions at the end of the summer or even before the summer ends because they know that our students have graduated and they are available. That is not how they look at undergrads, obviously, but that is how they look at our students. Some students get full-time jobs, and we're seeing salaries of maybe $35,000 to $45,000 for full-time jobs, possibly higher if you're talking about a specialization in, business reporting. So it is quite a big range, and so that's what we're seeing in terms of salaries. Somebody asked online about job titles. Is anybody interested to know, what do our data students do? What do our computer science dual degree students do after J School? And this is, again, it's a work in progress. These job titles keep changing, and I will be the first to admit I do not actually understand what a front-end engineer is, but one of our students do get jobs like that at Facebook, at Microsoft. In tech, but also in journalism companies. So it's it's different kinds of. Some of the students come in thinking that they want to work for a news organization, and the big legacy media companies are adding positions to their newsrooms with that require data skills, and the titles are interactive graphics and interactive news, data, journalism. It's a very, very broad term. The students who come here from the dual degree program and the computer science program have far, deeper, tech skills, and they have gone to, Bloomberg as analysts or Facebook or Apple or Google in recent years, doing things that are maybe not particularly journalistic, but they do the dual degree because they want training in storytelling, or they want a job at the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, and they do get those jobs with their advanced training. Okay, any questions? Yes, want to go to the computer, go to the mic, because this is being live streamed, so we want our prospective students abroad or wherever across the country to hear. Go ahead, yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
In the first slide where you mentioned the percentage of last year's graduates who got work, of that 73%, what percent are freelancing?
It's not the most common pursuit. I wish, off the top of my head, it's like 5%.
And of those, are they freelancing regularly? Are they getting work, or is it just they've freelanced at least once?
No, so the way we analyze that is we sort of grill the student a little bit more on what they're saying. Like we want to know whether it's just a placeholder for when something better comes up, or if it's really a career choice, which, by the way, it is a career choice for some people. They love the freedom, they want to travel abroad, they have funding to do that. So it is a mix, but it's a small number, and it's a small number. We're glad that it's a small number because it's not really a viable lifestyle for a very long time. It can be incredibly fun and freeing, and but it's not for everybody, and it's not at all like a very big number.
Thank you.
My question's about the last point that you raised. So it's a two-part question. Is that salary that you mentioned between 35 and 45, is that the starting salary or the median salary after a certain amount of time?
That's what they're offered right out of J school. These are no. This is. I mean, the range is really high. I mean, students with more experience, and we do have a number of students here with more experience, will. Sometimes they'll get more than that. Sometimes they're right in that range as well. If they take a fellowship at the J school, the fellowships at the J school that are year-long, fellowships or 2 years in education reporting, I think the salary is about $45,000 plus full benefits. So that includes some people with a lot of experience.
And my second part pertains to that same last point, which is that most people go on for internships. What percentage of the graduating class go directly into internships, and which percentage actually go on to full-time jobs?
It's about 45 to 50% of the students who take journalism positions. Those are internships. Now, the reason why that's true is because this is as of graduation day, and the internship season happens, like right now we're in it. So students are applying like crazy now for positions in the summer. And the big companies have their deadlines now. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Time Inc., the AP, they're now. So our students, that's why they're lined up with something by graduation, because these deadlines are happening now, and in the spring, even more deadlines happen. Full-time jobs come online much later in the year. After the expo is when students start looking for jobs, so it is a smaller number. Last year, it was 27% of the students who took journalism jobs were going into new full-time jobs, and then that's the number that it's sort of late breaking, because journalism editors aren't hiring way in advance; they're hiring immediately, and so that's a number that changes a lot during the summer.
Okay, thanks.
I was wondering, are you seeing higher salaries being paid for like journalism jobs that demand the data skills, like the data so-called data journalism jobs?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The Bloombergs of the world and Microsoft, and they can pay a lot more than that. We've seen salaries of more closer to 80, 90, 100,000 for those jobs. It's not
what sort of jobs do you mean specifically?
Engineer and analyst jobs at news organizations or at these tech companies. Now it's
Oh, okay. Maybe that's not what I meant by data journalism jobs. I guess I mean maybe the one like the writing jobs that would involve like they would want you to have the skills.
You mean like the MS program, the data concentration?
Sure.
So this is it's a new program. We are seeing students they're right in with the rest of the students in terms of taking internships at newspapers, and the range is what I said earlier. $10 an hour to, although I don't, that's really low. It's more, closer to maybe 11 or 12, and then up to $1,200 a week, which is what Bloomberg pays. Wall Street Journal's like $700 a week. AP, Reuters, the New York Times are closer to $950 to $1,000 a week. And so our data students are in the mix in those in that range.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much. Good luck with your decision.
You can clap, that's okay.
All right, we're almost there, I promise. Thank you for joining us this morning and now into this afternoon, I think. I hope you were able to get some good information, hearing from our faculty, from our students, and our staff. So I just want to conclude with some admissions financial aid information, announcements, reminders, and then answer any questions you may have about that. And then go enjoy the beautiful fall, still fall, right? We're not in winter yet, though some days it feels like it. But how many are from New York, by the way, in the audience? Okay. Well, maybe I should say not from New York. Okay, well, it's a good mix, half and half for those of you who can't see at home. How many are from a warm climate? Warmer than here, probably. Okay. All right, so it's the minority. So most of you should already have coats and boots and hats and gloves and those sorts of things. So you're already halfway there. For those people who may come from tropical climates, Southern California, somewhere like that, who don't own those items, that's definitely something to put on a list. If you have a holiday wish list, ask for those sorts of items because you're going to need them here. I promise you. But a couple things I just want to remind everybody about. First, the deadlines. The application deadlines are quickly approaching. December 15th is the deadline for Master of Science applications, including the data degree, full-time, part-time, and any PhD applicants. January 9th for Master of Arts applicants, and then January 15th for dual degree with computer science. That application goes through the engineering school, so if anybody has any questions or problems regarding that, please feel free to reach out. Also, any of those applications, of course, if you're encountering any problems, please reach out to our office and we can remedy those for you. But keep in mind, December 15th is quickly approaching. All of your materials with the application will need to be uploaded by that time as well, so all of your writing samples, essays, your resume, transcript, you will see areas to upload those materials prior to submission. You will have to give us the names and contact information of the people who you're asking to write references for you. So obviously those don't have to be in. The references will have to be in by January 15th for MS applicants, the end of January for MA applicants. We understand those take a little bit longer, so we give those recommenders a little extra time. But all of the things that you are responsible for, you have to have uploaded with the application by the deadline. Transcripts, you have to get those from your registrar's office. We don't want them, something that you just print off a student portal that you may have at home, take a picture on your phone and upload it, nothing like that. It has to be an official looking transcript, even if it's unofficial, says issued to students, something like that, that's okay. You don't have to have an official copy sent to us until you would actually enroll. If there are any questions, it is outlined, I think, pretty well on the application on that section. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. For MS applicants, the writing test is a required part of that. It is available now. We had it available earlier this year because we know people are busy and they want to get this scheduled. Typically, you wouldn't even get information about it in prior years if some of you have applied in the past until after near the end of December. But it is available right now to take. But you do have to submit the application. So once you submit that, within about 24 hours, you're emailed information about how to take the test. You don't have to come here. It's an online test. And it's proctored remotely, so we'll send that information to you once you submit your application, and then you can schedule that. I know this is a busy time for a lot of us, so you can schedule that as soon as possible, and we do encourage you to do that so you have the application and you have the writing test done, and we can take it from there. We don't require the GRE except for the dual degree with computer science and the PhD program, so our Master of Arts, Master of Science do not require the GRE. We don't have specific minimum grade point average requirements. For the Master of Science, there's not specific experience or prerequisite courses that you have to have. So when I say that, people typically ask, well, what do you look for? What's left? We do a very holistic review of our applications. We do look at all of those materials that you upload. We read those recommendations, read those essays, scrutinize those writing samples and that writing test. But there's a couple of things that we really emphasize, and being here at Columbia, being an Ivy League institution in a building that's called Pulitzer Hall, where the Pulitzer Prize is awarded, we really like to think we're training the next generation of journalists, and that's why we have a new data degree, and that's why we've changed the curriculum to make sure our students are prepared to go out into the workforce, number one, to be ready right away, but then also to be adaptable and to have skills to be part of wherever this industry is headed. And I don't think anybody has an exact answer to that. No one can say, this is where we're going tomorrow, next week, next year, 2 years, 5 years, because if you go backwards, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, we can see all that change, and I think we're just in the midst of that. So, one, we want people who are good writers. That will help take you through that process of where the industry is going. Whether you're taking a data course, a digital course, or a long-form writing course with us, we're going to emphasize writing, reporting, and storytelling really above all else. So the skills that you have coming in terms of writing, are you a good storyteller? Can you take information and synthesize it and boil it down into something that's digestible for a mass audience, perhaps? We'll look for skills like that. And then also, 2, why is this a career that you want to do? From everything that you've heard, you've seen it's an investment, you're putting in time, you're putting in money, you have some of you may have backgrounds coming in from different areas. You're putting in something that the person beside you is coming from a different place, and you ultimately are going to have different goals when you leave here. So we want people who are passionate about making this their career, and they know that this is something that they want to do and make a living from. As you heard, I think Professor Friedman say, that's okay, even if you had an epiphany at some point that said, okay, I want to be a journalist now, but that is your passion and your dedication, that's great. But what I always tell people is, if you were watching the news last night and you saw the reporter who's standing out in the hurricane, who's being pummeled by wind and rain, and you thought, oh, this is really cool, I want to do that, I want to be that person. That's okay, but do you want to be a journalist? Do you want to tell stories? Do you want to write? Do you want to uncover truths and investigate? That's what we teach our students to do. It's not because you watched the news last night and thought, oh, this is really cool and fun, maybe that can be me. Maybe it can, but we're going to train you on a lot of other skills as well. So good writing and passionate individuals, that's who we look for. So the application for admission is one thing. The second thing to keep in mind would be the scholarship application. That's very important. Many people think that they're automatically considered for applications, or for scholarships, and that could be true at some places, but not here. You do have to fill out the scholarship application. U.S. citizens, permanent residents also have to do the FAFSA form, and that'll make you eligible for any scholarships that we offer through the journalism school. We offer around $4 million every year. So filling out that application, completing that, will make you eligible for anything that we can give you institutionally here. That application should be available next week, so stay tuned. You will be receiving an email if you have an admissions application started. We will be sending you an email to let you know when the scholarship application will be available to submit, and you'll find it in the exact same place that you found the admissions application. The deadline for that is February 1st, so that's very important to note. There are a number of other resources that you can take advantage of that we highly encourage you to do. If you've already looked at our financial aid website, that page on the website, that's great. That has all the information there that you're going to need, and it'll lay it all out for you in a pretty concise manner. There are a lot of outside scholarships that we encourage you to apply for. We have a laundry list on our website. Those are something that we don't have jurisdiction over, but we've had students that have brought those with us, outside organizations that have said they have scholarships available for students. So we encourage you to look through those, apply for whatever you feel you may be eligible for. Also look for scholarships in your home communities. There are civic organizations, community-based organizations who, just like undergrad, will offer students to graduate students, or for sometimes it doesn't matter what level of education you're seeking. So wherever you're from, we encourage you to look also in those areas. There are graduate school loans, definitely, that you would have access to if you're a U.S. citizen, permanent resident. The university also has a payment plan. If you've exhausted all outlets in terms of scholarship, in terms of loans, and you still have an outstanding balance prior to the beginning of courses, the university has a payment plan where you can pay that off in even installments over the course of the year. So what most of our students do is take advantage of most, if not all, of those avenues to make it happen. So yes, you've heard it's an investment. The financial piece should really be as big a part of your academic planning as maybe the admissions application and what you're going to write about in your essays and what writing samples to submit. The financial piece is definitely something that you need to consider equally, if not as much, because they really do go hand in hand. So keep in mind that scholarship application with the deadline of February 1st. Stay tuned for info. And then mid-March, all the decisions will come out in terms of
who's been admitted and the financial aid awards. And then at that time, we also get into housing and all of the student services things that you need to take care of, but that will certainly come down the line. But keep in mind for those admissions and scholarship applications, and then most everybody would be notified by mid-March from that point. So I just want to make sure that we've kind of covered those nuts and bolts sort of things. And in conclusion, any questions, anything you've wanted to ask, or anything that I just mentioned there that needed some clarification, please ask. And again, if you would, please step up to the mic so everybody can hear.
Hi. I just had a question on the MS program. You guys don't require the GRE, but if we're taking the GRE for other schools that do require it, is there any sense in reporting the score anyway?
It's not something, honestly, that we look at. So if you have it, you really do not need to supply that to us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm applying directly from my undergrad institution. I was wondering, how common is that in your incoming class?
Yeah, we really get a mix. And over the last several years, we've seen an increase in the number of students applying directly from an undergraduate program to complete and do the master's degree. It's always a personal choice. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's if people are coming directly from undergrad and they want to come here for a year, if it's full time, and if they're not from New York, as you've heard the students come here and be in the media capital of the world and experience that and work with faculty and have access to the career services and the expo and all of those sorts of things. It's a very logical progression for a lot of people that they're taking advantage of. So that's something that we're definitely seeing more and more of.
Hey, again, sorry for my third question. I was wondering, I've been trying to find information about how to apply to the dual degree program with SEPA online, and there doesn't seem to be a good workflow for that. How does that work? Do you apply to both schools simultaneously?
You do, yes. So for the dual degree programs, so for the one dual degree program with computer science, it's one application through the engineering school, and it's reviewed jointly. For the other dual degree programs, you do have to apply to each school for the same year, follow each school's requirements, deadlines. Then if you're admitted to both schools, for example, say you apply next year, you're admitted to both schools, you could defer one for a year. The journalism school courses, as you've heard it described all day, would function the same for the dual degree students. So you would just be focusing the year that you're here on the journalism program as it was described, and then you would go back to the other school, to SEPA for instance, the School of International Public Affairs, and then complete the program there, which would be sped up a little bit more. But for the application process, you do have to apply to both schools. So you'd apply to us, but you also would have to apply to them. And so if you can't find the process on their end, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to the admissions office there and get in contact with them. But for everything that we've covered here, that would just be for the year that you're in the journalism school, and you would have to apply and be accepted here too. Yeah.
And then do you indicate your interest in doing the dual degree program within your application for both schools?
Yes, on our application, we do have that indicates if you're interested in a dual degree, yes.
Okay. And then, this is so logistical, I'm sorry. For the reference letters, should they all be the same for both schools? Should the application be virtually identical in terms of its content, even if the essays that you're writing are different in their scope or their topic?
Yeah, they may be different only because you're applying to our school and then you're also applying to their school.
Okay.
So for us, if you have a recommendation that talks about somebody who knows your interests or your capabilities within public policy or international affairs, that might not be as applicable as it is for us. So maybe we'd rather hear about somebody you worked for when you did a journalism internship, for example. Right. So there could be times in there, especially within essays, if you have interest in both and showing that you're doing both, yes. Maybe to some degree, but completely, maybe not even completely, but things like recommendations and so forth, I think should definitely be tailored to the individual school's requirements. So that's why I say it really is two separate applications.
Super. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hi. I have a question. For prospective students applying for the part-time program, will they also be eligible to apply for the scholarship? And are there any scholarship opportunities for part-time students?
Yeah, every student who applies is eligible for scholarships, absolutely. Yes. Are there any specific part-time? I don't know if Dean Souders has any information specifics to that. I don't, not that I'm aware of, right? Yeah. So so hang on to that too. But right now you'd be in the same pool as everybody else. But yes, definitely apply.
Hi,
I'm applying to the MS program with a documentary specialization.
Sure.
And a lot of my background is in photojournalism. So my question is if there's a spot in the application that would be appropriate to submit photojournalism clips or video. I don't know if it would substitute for writing samples or...
Yeah, so in terms of clips, like I did say we want to see your writing abilities, and that is extremely important. But if you started an application, you may have hopefully seen there's a section for writing samples, and there's also a section for multimedia clips. And you can only submit 3 in total. Submitting 3 writing samples is great, not a problem. If you're more of a broadcast person and you want to go into documentary and you've done audio, video, or have more visual things to present, and you feel those are your best pieces, that's fine too. A mix would also be great. I think we definitely would like to see writing, because like I said, even if you're in a documentary program, you're filming, you're interviewing, you're learning all the skills, but you're also putting the story together as well. So there's still going to be written components to that, and we do like to see those skills from our students. We do have students that have put photojournalism up there, and you can do that. There's even a place in that multimedia section if you have things online to give us a URL where we can go to the website. The one thing to not do though is just copy and paste URLs onto a Word document and upload that in the written samples. We won't be able to open them. So purely written samples, either Word documents, PDF documents of articles, stories, should go in the written section, and anything online or audio files, video files should go in the multimedia clip section. If you're doing a documentary program, it is a good idea, and it's important to show those skills. So yes, writing is important, but if you have some things on a broadcast style that shows the skills for documentary, then that would also be something good to include specifically if you're interested in that program.
Would it be appropriate to include photojournal? I work as a photojournalist for a newspaper, so what I was imagining is submitting photographs with cut line information and like a video format, but I wasn't sure if that would be what you're looking for.
Go ahead. Yeah, so you're asking about if you're interested in documentary, you have photos that you might be interested in submitting specifically, and you have it though in maybe a video format. The one thing, kind of the overarching thing I always say is, what 3 samples do you think best showcase your abilities? If you know writing's important, if you're interested in documentary, the audio, video, broadcast aspect is important. Photos are fine, especially if you have stories that go along with that, so that does show your journalistic abilities, your writing style, your skills along that. So if you have text and you have written stories that might accompany that, it might be a little bit stronger. Just photos, for example, may not be, so I would just be cautious of those. If there are other pieces that you think showcase those writing and broadcast skills better than that, I would perhaps maybe consider those. And this is a conversation we can continue to have too if you'd like to. So that's something it's an option, sure. If you think those are the best pieces that you have and that's what that includes, then sure. But there's other things you think can showcase who you are, what you can do, your style, your skills, that might be more specific to the program that you're applying for, that might even be a little bit more effective. Sure.
Hi, my name is Ali Zaslav. I'm applying for the Masters of Science. I was looking through the multimedia clips, and it says 2 to 3 minutes. In the past 2 years, I've specialized in storytelling for emerging platforms, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram. I think since it kind of aligns with everything we've discussed today, that this is a new form of storytelling and the way to kind of turn a complex news stories into a 1-minute video that can reach a wide audience from 1 million people to 100 million people on social media, if that's something that I'm able to submit, or if I should make them longer to fit the 2 to 3 minutes.
So right now you have 1 minute,
around
1
minute 30
clips.
seconds. I have some other clips, but I think that those really represent kind of where things are moving towards and the attention span of people on social media. So
Right, and that's really okay. I think that's more so there for people who have a 30-minute documentary and want to upload. I don't even know if the file would be large enough to do that, but those are something where we may not want be able to sit there for 30 minutes to watch a full documentary. Certainly a minute is fine. One thing I'll tell you, if you want to kind of go around, you have several things that you want to do. If you put them online, And if you have like 3 1-minute things, and you want to combine them, and say it's on like a website and you have the URL, that can be one clip, but you've strung 3 things together. So that's a way to kind of show more things, but really having it only be 1 clip. But again, not to go beyond that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Actually, ask just one follow-up question. Actually, I have a video clip which is about like 5 minutes. So is that something that we should cut it short as 3 minutes, or 5 minutes is fine?
We recommend 2 to 3, but
Yeah.
if you have something a little bit longer, it's usually still going to be okay. We just, again, don't want it to be too long. So use your best discretion. If you only want to submit a sample of it, or kind of trim it down a little bit, and you think this is the part that I really want them to focus on, that might be a good idea to do that. But if you want to submit the whole thing, it should still be okay, as long as the file is accepted.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi. During my undergraduate career, I had an internship where we posted our write-ups. Sorry, our write-ups got posted online, but we weren't given bylines. How would you go about confirming that we wrote that, or like, should we just submit it? Or, how does that work?
Yeah, if you're submitting a clip, there should be a section to describe what it is. So there's going to be a box there when you submit that to give us a little explanation of your involvement in that, if we can't really see that right away. So so you can give us a little description and tell us what that is.
Sounds good, thanks.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Sola. Sorry, my voice is a little weird today. But my question is that, so for a video clip, if it's something that I co-work with other people, is it still acceptable, or do you want something that's completely worked by myself?
Preferably something that you've done specifically yourself. And that's, again, you can put the description. So it depends on what your involvement was, I guess, too. If it's a true representation of your work and like, this is mine, that could be okay. But it's really going to be best if there's something that you show that this is a representation of my work and my work solely. When you work with other people on things, then it gets a little gray, because we're not going to know, did he or she do this part, that part, and you really don't want to leave it up to the admissions committee to try to guess on what your involvement is. So if you have some great things that are solely your own, I would lean towards those.
Understand. So adding on that, sorry for my voice. If you apply for the DUA program and you got, let's say, if you only got accepted for one program, and then declined by the other one, are you gonna end up with this program, or are you just gonna be like denied?
No, since you're applying to both, you have to be accepted to both, and at that point they're kind of divergent. Yes, if you're accepted to one, if you're interested in, someone mentioned the School of International Public Affairs, you're not admitted there, but you are admitted to the journalism school, you would definitely still have the offer to attend the journalism school.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else? Any further questions? Please reach out to us, especially as we quickly approach December 15th. You can find all of our information, phone number, website, email, on the materials in your packets. Please keep in contact with us. We look forward to receiving applications, hopefully, from you. And if it's in a future year, please keep the dialogue open. We're always going to be here to help. And as we move from year to year, we'd love to see you back here. But for those of you who are thinking of 2018, please keep in contact with us and let us know how we can help in any way. Thanks for coming. We appreciate the time, and hopefully see you back here soon.